Hi, good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are. This is Mitch Starr from Zen Marketing Inc. And today we're interviewing Matt Olen of Grip Spritz.com, a unique product for the people that play basketball, a product that's been out in the marketplace for 7 years. I talked to Matt about getting off the ground, about hiring and keeping good staff, quite a bit about sales, and at the very end, he gives up 3 pieces of advice or 3 things he wished he'd have known sooner. So here you go. We'll start with the founder story, why you got into this business and how the business got going.
Yeah, I'll try and truncate it because I know these stories can get kind of long sometimes. But basically, I graduated college with a double major in finance and economics, and I really wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to go into. Graduated in 2018, and I had the opportunity to get pretty lucky where a guy that I grew up around the corner from him, he's turning 74 this year, was walking his dog, and he said, "Hey, I got this spray that I'm using for golf grips right now, and basically, instead of regripping your golf club every 3-4 months and having to wait for it to come back to you, it's going to do it instantaneously." And I had heard, a couple rumblings throughout the neighborhood when I was a kid about, this crazy guy that invented this spray and was going to the PGA Tour and all the big stuff. And when we had talked, he kind of told me some of the ins and outs and struggles he had and actually flipping the product into basketball rather than golf. And he thought of me immediately because when he was walking his dog when I was a young man, I was always in the driveway playing basketball. So I got the opportunity to kind of start working with him. And I leveraged a few connections I had from my playing days that were almost a decade prior at that point. But we were able to get in and kind of do a quick test run to see how it worked. And next thing you know, we're 6 years into the business, 7 years into the business, and still partners and still going great.
Oh, that's awesome. So then who are your primary customers? Who do you target this towards, aside from basketball?
Yeah, so it's mainly...
Like who in the sport?
Yeah, so it's mainly parents. A lot of times you either have the athlete themselves who's tired of slipping on the court, or you'll have the parent who, I'm sure if you guys watch any basketball, you constantly see athletes that are going to lick their hand and wipe their shoe. You can get after the parents pretty quick to let them know that's gross and there's an alternative. And then we also kind of have a B2B side of things where we go after athletic directors for schools, facility owners, both kind of on a wholesale side as well as just a customer side. So pretty multifaceted in terms of who our end customer is, but for the most part, it's the parents and the kids.
Parents and the kids. So, and aside from, I know you through your website, aside from your website, what other channels do you have in place to get to end customers?
Yeah, so we'll do our website, like you said. Amazon is a big one for us, Walmart.com, TikTok Shop, Etsy, and eBay. It's kind of our main 5 right now. And then a little bit of, like I said, some distributors and wholesalers, whether that's through sporting goods stores or kind of ad hoc salesmen who are basically basketball trainers that have a built-in audience that they can leverage.
Now, and do you use influencers and resellers of that nature in your channel strategy?
A lot on TikTok Shop. When it comes to the affiliate side, we really try and leverage that because mainly just the halo effect when it goes to Shopify or to Amazon, kind of having the ability to get micro influencers for simply the cost of shipping them product, and then a commission on the back end is really, really easy for especially for beginners. So I think that's the route we go into. And then, when videos do perform a little bit better, we kind of go back with that creator and then can whitelist those ads from their page or from our own page and then pay them out that way. So we kind of know it's a winner before we put some spend behind it.
Yeah. So how did that channel, TikTok in particular, and the TikTok Shop, how did that perform compared to what you expected? Did you know what to expect with it?
No. So when we started like the day it came out in 2023. Like I think it was May of 2023 it came out. I'm like, let's just throw it on here and see what we can do. And at that point in time, we got a little bit lucky where if you tagged a product, for the sake of tagging a product, you were getting 100,000, 200,000 views. And it kind of really helped us with our messaging, not even from a TikTok perspective, but from a website perspective, because we had so much inflow. Like if you look at a session graph on our Shopify backend, it's Mount Everest that month because every video we were posting was doing usually 7-figure views. And that really helped us in terms of kind of running through a heat map and seeing where fall off was on the website. But in terms of TikTok itself, we really used it as that kind of just a magnet to draw attention to the brand without really saying, okay, hey, whatever, we're not dependent on this revenue. Whatever comes of it, comes of it. And it's continually kind of grown as TikTok has matured a little bit. At the beginning, I think when they first came out, I don't know how serious they took it, where you had a lot of people who may see a product but are still going to, at the end of the day, go to the website or go to Amazon because they trust it. And, it's not the Wild West per se. But as TikTok has taken that step-by-step process to become a little more serious and kind of have some of the incentives for buyers, for sellers, it's really done well for us. We went from that first year, I think we did maybe 8,000 in May to end of year, and then this past year we did just over 65,000 on there without really running any ads. This year we're jumping pretty heavily into like the GMV Max ads and different things there, where we think that can definitely be a low six-figure sales channel for us.
Channel, yeah. Well, so you probably feel fortunate you jumped in when you did.
Yeah, kind of that early mover. And that's kind of been the tale of a lot of what we did. When we came out with our product itself, we got pretty lucky in the fact that it didn't exist. Like the product, it was an unknown thing, where now, we look at from our first 3-4 years, where it was really just us and maybe one or two others. Like anything, when you start to kind of garner a little bit of attention on social media, or, there's a subset of people who just look for winning products on Amazon with some of their tools. I think we're at like 28 competitors now. But we were definitely that early mover, where a lot of different things that play a role that we really didn't even know we were optimizing for, like SEO and different things we were ranking for, early mover, right? So it's kind of just been the tale of what we've been doing, whether that's different sales channels or different ways of garnering attention to the brand.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. So of the competitors that you have, are you finding they're made up of mostly copycats, or is there somebody big who's moved into your space to sort of take it away or try to take it away?
It's mainly been copycats, which I guess we're thankful for. If Nike ever comes out with a product to rival us, it'll be a little bit tougher. But in the short term, it's been kind of started off as, you could see it in who was selling on Amazon, the random assortment of letters. You're assuming it's kind of a Chinese brand. We've kind of had two that have come on of late that are giving a lot of the same kind of copy or pain points that we started off as. And if you go to the website, they're using the same font and stuff. So it's little stuff that you'll see a knockoff here and there, but they've kind of branched out into their own different lanes. One's kind of more a every sport fix, and the other's kind of become like the aim to be a premium brand with a little higher price point. So it's just, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah. Well, I play squash as my sport, and I imagine this would be a great product for the squash court, because they usually maintain them pretty good between games, but shoe slipping is an issue sometimes.
Yeah, and it's I know you guys are local to us a little bit, but when we go to the EU, it's so much different in terms of, basketball is not quite as big there, but some of those countries are massive for volleyball, for indoor soccer, for badminton. And that's kind of where we toe that line, where a lot of our accolades and different endorsements and things are in the basketball side. And you don't want to kind of avoid those, because I think there is a little bit of a pushback when someone claims to be a one-stop shop, a fix-all, where you kind of lose, for lack of a better term, the coolness in the basketball space of being solely basketball. But as those opportunities present itself, it's constantly kind of evolving how we do packaging, how we do different things to be a fix for squash, for badminton, for volleyball, for whatever opportunity presents itself, without selling out kind of what our core principle is of basketball.
Yeah. So this is a related question, but a follow-on question to this. I think I read somewhere you did a rebranding in the fall of last year, and then you have the same decision to make, to stay with your core or expand the product offering to other sports and other nationalities and geographies. Like, how do you go through and make those decisions?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we really kind of, for everything we were early on, we were late on that. Where our previous logo, like I said, I don't think any of us in our team will take offense to this. We were not marketing people. So we kind of just threw together a logo, I think back in 2011, and that was the logo up until this year. We had actually had a lot of kids and adults that came up to us and said, this is reminiscent of like a you'd see on like an infomercial on like daytime television, like a cheap Chinese magic that, it's magic in a bottle. So when we were going through that rebrand, it was very focused on becoming kind of a little more corporate in the field, because our old logo was pretty, playful and vibrant for the stuff we were doing B2C. But when we got to the B2B side, and you're working with athletic directors and professional sports leagues and stuff, the branding didn't really fit that side of things. So it was re-envisioning that with keeping the core essence of basketball. So if you look at our logo now, the basketball court is a part of the logo. But I think a lot of times when you're working at rec centers, or even, I'm sure you guys, obviously squash is played in a separate room. But I think if you look at, pickleball, volleyball, badminton, at the end of the day, typically these are basketball or volleyball courts that are kind of being set up to be a different sport, where we're kind of painting the use case for the product without deviating too far from what we want to be and who we are at our core.
Yeah. So, have you got lots of room to go within the basketball space, or do you think you have it covered?
Yeah, we think we have a little bit more room to run. The way we looked at the basketball space, like any sport, really is an upside-down pyramid, right? You got the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th to 12th graders that are playing all year round, and that's kind of the base we wanted to go after. Just a larger, TAM, right? Versus kind of getting too in the weeds with sponsoring, say an NCAA conference or the NBA, where that's such a small percentage. And at the end of the day, when those athletes are playing on the pristine court and the new shoes every night, how effective is our product going to be? And I think that can, kind of turn people off, versus, having these affiliates or having high school athletes be able to come in and say, hey, I play on, I know the AAU courts we all are stuck playing on, the plastic tile courts, and this is the solution. So it's almost more of we don't really want to go deeper. Obviously, you want to partner with the NBA and things like that, but you don't want to go too much deeper. You kind of almost want to go wider into, some of these other ancillary basketball markets that are underserved, and that's what we started to do with some of our alternative products, right? The traction mat for teams, the court mat for facilities, where you're almost making it more of a legitimacy play where, okay, hey, this thing is backed by national coaches associations or by the people who make the hardwood courts, kind of letting that be the anchor of legitimacy for the individual bottle. And then taking that sole focus of how do we improve the individual side for the individual bottles, making that, like you said, kind of more away from basketball, and attacking the receiver gloves in football, the baseball gloves in baseball, the tennis racket grips, the squash grips, the pickleball players, the whatever the case may be. So I think it's go deeper on our ancillary products, but on our main product, go wider.
That's a good overview. A lot of people will face that same challenge, and sometimes they don't even know what's coming.
Yeah. You don't really know when you're running out of customers or what the market is, especially for us. Like I said, when we started, we were kind of the first people in that space, so you really didn't know what that market size was. And then as every new competitor comes in, obviously their ad spend, and it's not just us promoting the idea of this anymore, it's multiple brands promoting the same idea of a traction in a bottle, quote unquote. You don't know when the top of the mountain's coming, because it's new for all of us.
Yeah. Let's change gears for a bit and talk about supply chain a little bit. Are you affected by things like the tariffs that we went through last year? I had some customers who were very affected by it.
Yeah, it's I know a lot of people, and this is thankfully for us, we do everything in Ohio. We don't have a single thing coming to us from overseas. We don't have anything really coming to us from further than an hour and a half away, which is very helpful. Like I said, when we do the Amazon side of things, like I said, it's a lot of Chinese kind of knockoffs that, one of our competitors, I think you could almost look on Alibaba and find their exact listing. And as soon as they go do that and sell a good chunk, right, everyone's going to jump on it. And one of the things that have helped us, both tariffs, as well as Amazon passing that new kind of breakdown that they're going to report, taxes to the Chinese government, it's definitely helped us on that front, not being reliant on an overseas manufacturer. And that really helps us too, especially when it comes to Q4 and we're kind of running different Christmas bundles or Black Friday bundles. We can be a little more lenient on our inventory forecasting, knowing that if we really need to, we can get more inventory in 2 to 6 weeks.
Yeah. So does your model is it like a consumption model that people buy the product, use the product, and then need more of the product?
Yeah. So I think on our team side, like our traction mat and our court mop, we almost looked at those from like a printer market, where we're going to try and keep it as affordable as possible as school budgets shrink and funding always is going the wrong direction for these schools, was make the either the mat or the mop as affordable as possible, knowing that once you got it and you liked it, you'd constantly be coming back to us for the floor cleaning solution or the solution to clean the shoes. And then this year, we're actually kind of taking a similar track to that on the individual side. We were actually just joking about it internally yesterday. It just feels like everything these days is subscription based. So, like, it could be a product that I don't even think you need a subscription, but they're going to try and sell you a subscription, where we're kind of going that route too, where it's, if we have these athletes that are playing, for their school in the fall, then they're going to go play for their travel team in the spring, and in the summer be in the gym constantly working out. It's like, okay, how can we do this where it's almost quarterly, we're delivering the product on a subscription platform. And that's something we really try to dive into on the consumable side, where instead of constantly trying to acquire new customers, just keep them continually using the product.
Yeah. So I'll throw this out there. It might be good advice. It might not be. But I've worked with a lot of marketers over the years, and a lot of people have looked at this subscription model. And the way I see it manifested most of the time is, you've got a $20 serving, and you put it on subscription and say 15%, and it's $17.50 or something like that. And their feeling is, the people will step into it for the discount. But there is a distrust and a fear because they can't always get easily out of a subscription. But when offered a chance to prepay 12 months of subscription in one easy payment, a lot of people will get 2 months free and fund it all up front. So I would somewhere along the way recommend that you test that.
Yeah, it's very funny you mention that, because I was just reading a case study the other day on subscriptions, and someone I know fairly well in the volleyball space, they run a subscription box for volleyball players, and I was kind of just going down the preliminary conversations of subscription and different ways to do things when I asked him. He said that's been our biggest lever we pulled, was doing either 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months fully prepaid, because when we first did subscriptions, we kind of tested it maybe 2 years ago, just with like Shopify's free plugin without getting too sophisticated with it. And the issue with the free plugin, of course, was that it didn't hold card information. So they could come in and they could order it, get the 20% off I think we were offering, and immediately cancel the subscription. And they were basically just getting the 20% discount every order, and we had no way to basically recapture that loss. A lot of the places now will contract out and say, hey, if you cancel in the first billing cycle, you're charged full price. So we weren't able to do that. And then, like you said, some of the distrust that comes into it is, I was also in that same kind of case study, is how you may up your churn early on by sending hey, we're going to charge you in 7 days, but your lifetime value of those customers that aren't churning are staying a lot longer, because you're not kind of posting and ghosting and then never talking to them again and just charging them every month on the month, and they're getting an abundant amount of product that they don't actually need. And it's kind of just sitting in the cabinet, where it's, if you kind of remind people, you may lose people in the short term, but long term, you're going to capture a lot more value. So that's something we're super cognizant of.
Tell me about your online channels. What kind of KPIs do you watch for seeing which channels to lean into and spend more money on, and which channels to pull back on?
Yeah, that's interesting, because, if you look at some of our lesser channels, mainly Walmart, Etsy, eBay, those are kind of just solely SEO plays, where, eBay and Etsy and Walmart.com are just always going to rank higher than GripSpritz.com, just the way of the world. So we have those on there almost as a way to just kind of have a higher rank, both in Google Shopping and there. So those ones we're not super forward on, like, okay, what are we needing to meet on a revenue basis here? or how are their increased fees or advertising really affecting the bottom line there. Those are almost solely cast a wide net and see what you catch. And then we're very, very focused on TikTok Shop, kind of as a tertiary, but it's got to be Shopify and Amazon 1A, 1B. And kind of the big thing we look at is return customers on Shopify. So as you mentioned, it's a consumable. We're constantly watching how frequently are customers returning to us. Are we losing them to other brands? What type of messaging are these other brands using? Kind of scraping our reviews and competitor reviews to see, is there some sort of, hey, I switched over from this brand to this brand because of XYZ. So I think that does a good job in kind of telling us where we're missing the mark on messaging or in ads or things along those lines. And then at the same time is getting new to brand customers to Shopify versus Amazon. You want to own your customers, and unfortunately Amazon that's never going to happen. You're never going to get the contact information. You're never going to be able to remarket them. So for us, it is how well can we convert someone from Amazon. This is tough because there's no KPI that measures this. How can you get someone to trust your brand the way they trust Amazon? Where I know this transaction is going to be smooth. I know that if there's any issue with the product, it's a no questions asked refund. Obviously we can't just let you drop it off at UPS or Kohl's like Amazon does, and that's the end of your journey. But we try and make it as easy as possible so we can get a larger subset of customers into our funnel versus the Amazon funnel. So I think the biggest one we follow is return customer rate as well as new to brand customers on that specific platform. We can go into Amazon and we can see how many customers are consistently reordering. And then it's kind of how can we get in front of them, with teetering that Amazon terms of service of like inserts in the packaging of saying, hey, come on over to here where we're going to get it to you just as fast as in, the 2 days, or we're going to be just as, responsive to complaints without really messing up your Amazon pipeline. But I think those two for sure are the biggest for us, because you need to know that when someone buys from you, especially when you're a lower price point like we are, that ad spend, really almost need on the lowest option 2 sales from a buyer till you're making some money on them if they're coming from an ad. So it's how can we get them in our ecosystem, keep them there, or how can we take them from other ecosystems where we can't remarket to continually bring them into the Grip Spritz umbrella versus an ancillary channel.
Yeah. So you said something in there, I didn't want to forget about it. I thought it was really important. The scraping of reviews to garner the data to see what messaging or is being used against you or is turning up opportunity for better copywriting or product descriptions for marketing or feedback for product development. Talk more about that, how you stumbled into that.
Yeah, I think the first one, so we had a competitor come along they're the every sport fix. And one of the things they did on TikTok Shop that resonated with, I don't know who, whether it was kids, whether it was parents, who it was, but we say that our product is a grip enhancer. When you think grip enhancer, you think sticky. And when something's sticky and you go on a dusty court, your shoes are going to pick up more dust and dirt. So we were continually getting comments from viewers that were saying, wouldn't this just collect more dust? Wouldn't this just collect more dust? And, we would kind of explain it in the comments, but when I would see a TikTok from one of our competitors, theirs is saying, grip restorer and enhancer. So they're saying that they're restoring kind of the rubber material on the bottom of the shoes, and that was resonating just a little bit better, where I didn't see as many reviews or as many questions on their post of, oh, wouldn't this just make the shoes sticky? It's like that word restore was driving something subconsciously to the end customer saying, oh, this is making my shoes like new, not masking them with an enhancer. That's one that we really dove deep on, and how we changed some of our headlines now in our products, whether that's on Amazon, whether that's on when we tag a product on TikTok Shop, we're enforcing that this is a restorer. And, I think about it a lot just with how we kind of tiptoe around when people ask us about competitors, whether that's that we're the single sport fix, right? If you're a basketball player, you don't want to be using in every sport fix. You don't want to be using the same thing that a fencer's using. And I think we've seen competitors get a little more in the weeds on that type of stuff, where they're like, okay, when it's basketball season, we're not posting about any other sport. We're solely focusing on basketball. And it's kind of a give and take where we're learning from them as much as they're learning from us. I think some of it too, we learned really early on that we were having a problem with bottles breaking when shipping. And we were getting 1-star reviews, but there wasn't any description in there. But if I went to our other competitor, who was the kind of higher price point thing, their bottle is glass. And one of the biggest reviews they would say, if it, people mentioned Grip Spritz, was, we came over to a heavier duty bottle because we ordered twice from Grip Spritz and both of them arrived damaged. So it was like, okay, we need to do something with our packaging. And that's just information we weren't seeing on our 1-star reviews. It was just the 1-star with no text. So ours was constantly kind of searching and saying, like, if they're not telling us, they're going to tell somebody why they don't like us. And it was just having the scraping to find it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think it's an important point that people don't do enough of. But this also leads to another point, equally as important. In managing an e-commerce brand across all the platforms, all the supply chain, all the channels, all the things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. And you have to do like 101 things on your list to do everything right. And then it's like 101 things. Or do you focus on the big 5 or the big 7 and make that trade-off between 101, 107, then 115, 122, or I've got a core 7 things I do and make sure I do those exceptionally well. Which way do you lean, or do you even...
Yeah, this is it's funny. This has been a topic of conversation for ourselves internally, where we're kind of starting to make that switch where for the first 5 years, we were very 125 things. And it just felt like there was always a fire. There was always miscommunication ourselves internally because you weren't meeting enough because we were packaging orders. This order arrived broke. This person's calling complaining about this. This person has a question here. Who's managing this? Who's managing that? And it was just like you were all moving. We were rowing in the same direction, but we weren't rowing at the same time. We were all kind of fighting each other. Where this year we turned it into what are the, for lack of a better term, the big 5, 7 things that we can do that we know if we get those right, it'll cut down the other 115, where you still may have some that sneak into the day-to-day, but they're not monopolizing your time. So for us, it was, this year I just started it. On my Mondays, I do inventory management, where I look at all of our sales channels who do all of our fulfillment, because TikTok fulfills orders, Walmart fulfills their orders, Amazon fulfills their orders. We have our 3PL through our website. Is every Monday I just look and be like, okay, for the first 3 hours of my day, I'm going to get everyone situated with, hey, we sold more of this bundle on Amazon this week. We're a little low there. Tomorrow, first thing we're doing when everyone gets in the shop, just knock out a couple boxes to Amazon so we know we're good there. And then it's turning into, kind of Tuesday being more admin stuff in terms of what big things are we missing, or what like sponsorship things or wholesale things, where we can really dial in and just say, okay, if we can make sure our wholesalers and our distributors they have no questions, they have no issues, we're going to be able to hold on to them. So it's retaining, so we're not always the ones selling. How can we make their day-to-day the easiest possible? What are we missing on that front that we can be better for the next person? So that's kind of Tuesday. And then the back half of the week, it gets into, usually we're traveling later in the week, the Fridays into the weekend, where we're doing in-person events. So we kind of know Friday's a little bit of a limbo day where we don't want to put too much on the plate. And then it's just, little things. Like I said, scraping those reviews. And other days are what copy is working on TikTok that we can test as a meta ad, or just little different things. And every day kind of has their silo of like, this day we're solely focusing on marketing, and the back half of the day we can get into the little granular things that need attention but don't need my full undivided attention. So it's definitely been a year of what 5 to 7 levers, like you said, make the biggest difference, and then letting those run downstream. And that might not be something we see for 5, 6, 10 months, when we finally see, okay, the little fires we were putting out every day, those were mitigated because we got really, really good at product. Like, we're not trying to outmarket a B plus product. Now we're just marketing an A product. Like, just little incremental improvements where hopefully when you see it downstream, it's like, okay, that change day to day didn't seem like a lot, but now it's a much easier, week on week change.
Yeah. Well, that is just gold. That is gold. Okay. Yeah. So in closing, something I like to do is ask you for advice. So if I'm in your shoes a couple of years ago, what advice would you give me to help grow my brand, grow the business, save me from losing my hair? Like, what 3 pieces of advice would you give out based on your experience?
Yes, I think first is you need to make it bite-sized, because I think a lot of people, when you want to start a business, whether that's e-com, whatever the service-based, whatever the type of business is, I think if you look at it as a whole, everything you need to do, it becomes incredibly overwhelming, and I don't think you ever take that first step. And I remember when I came into Grip Spritz, like I said, I was not a marketer at all, but the 2 guys I owned it with were both in their 70s, and the ideas of social media and website optimization and all that stuff was not even a train of thought in their mind. So I think when I came in, it was like, all right, what's the first thing we need to do to make this product, this brand successful? It's like, all right, we need a website. And thankfully now with YouTube and different things, and even just going to websites you like you can, if you order, from Apple, I don't think everyone can quite have Apple design levels, but you see things that you like in a brand and say, okay, I can emulate that in my website. I need to learn how to do that. So I think it's making it bite-sized, where for a month and a half, 6 weeks, I didn't care about anything but building a good enough website for where I was at that time. And I didn't focus on building the website and making sure my product listings and collection pages and all that stuff was SEO optimized, or what's above the fold, below the fold, how are we messaging for conversion rate optimization, how are we tracking orders from organic social, and what's working. It was just make a good website. Okay, once that was done, what's the next bite-sized thing I can do? Okay, now I can start ranking higher on Google. What does that mean? Okay, it means blog posts. It means finding the applicable keywords that people are searching for in the Google search terms report and saying, like, okay, this is where I need to include in my product listings, in my back end, in my image tags, all that stuff. And then it was 6 weeks of that. Then it became, okay, hey, our product pictures aren't great. Let's go in and really do this. Then it became, during that time, of course, you are learning, oh, hey, if I add reviews to above the fold, when the customer comes to my page, they see my product, they don't even have to scroll, and they're already seeing a scrolling bar of reviews and testimonials. And like, you just kind of pick up little things, but everything had to be bite-sized, where I think if you start too big, too fast, you're going to burn yourself out on, you don't know what you don't know, essentially. And you're just constantly saying, like, okay, why is that company doing so much better than me? It must be because of this. It must be because of that. And it's almost always chasing another means to an end to be like, okay, let me do this week. Oh, that didn't work because you didn't give it enough time to actually work, so now you're on to the next thing. So I think for the one thing I always say to anyone starting is just make it as small and as attainable every single day as possible without getting yourself in too deep. I would say, secondly, you need to meet your customers where they are. I wish that 60% of our revenue wasn't from Amazon, who whacks us with fees when they check it in, when they check it out, when the customer, they get you everywhere. But to grow the brand, you need to be where the customer is, whether that's TikTok Shop, whether that's Walmart, whatever the case may be. You need to meet them where they're at, because they don't know you exist. And that kind of flows into my third point as a marketer. I always say no marketing is ever enough. I look at the Super Bowl was here last night. You see the biggest brands in the world spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on commercials, and everyone knows who Lay's chips are, but they're still running the ad. So you need to be posting as much organic content as you can. There will never be a point when you don't need affiliates, when you don't need cold outreach, when you don't need meta ads. Like, you have no idea how big your market is, and I think so many people see that number of, I'm giving up 20, 30% of my margin on ad. I think I'm probably big enough, and trust me, nobody knows who you are, no matter how big your business is, or not enough people know who you are. They might need to be reminded. I'm sure you know the numbers where it's like, 7 touch points for somebody even considers making a purchase. You constantly need to be marketing, and whatever you think is enough is not enough. You need to do more.
That is excellent. Thanks, Matt, for your time.
Mitch, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
I hope you enjoyed that and found some information in there that is actionable and helps you to grow your business. As you may or may not know, in marketing, we've been doing email marketing for companies for 18 years now. We know a thing or two because we've learned a thing or two. But I want to make you an offer. The first thing we do when we take on a new e-commerce client is to build out their welcome series. It's not flashy, but it is consistently one of the largest revenue generators of all the flows that we install. And most brands don't have a good one. So if you feel like you might not have a good one, I want to give you a head start. Send me your site. Just send me an email to mitch@zinmarketing.com about a custom welcome series flow for your brand. The flow, the angles, all the copy that you use. Basically enough material to basically make it live. Free money, if you will. Just done for you. No strings attached. I'll send everything back via email. Send an email to mitch@zinmarketing.com. Free welcome flow.